Okay, cool. Thanks, you guys, for coming out. Thanks for having me. My name is Eric Ozakowski. You can just call me Eric. It's okay. You don't have to memorize my last name. I'm a development manager over at General Motors. I'm also the senior dev lead over SharePoint and cloud strategy and platform at General Motors. We have a gigantic SharePoint infrastructure at that company. Come out and explain something that I've learned about not too long ago, but how it applies to the modern sites and the whole modern site strategy and the SharePoint framework. SharePoint framework definitely isn't new. It's a couple years old, and we'll get into that. So hopefully today I'll have enough time just to go over me really quick. For those of you who don't know me, I'll just do an overview of classic versus modern site differences, more of the high-level things that users would come to us and ask us about, or things that we should prepare for. I heard a lot of you talking earlier about how you're already in SharePoint Online, so you're familiar with the modern experience. We are not in SharePoint Online at General Motors. We're on-prem at 2016. We're going to be migrating to 2019 by September, and we will remain on-prem for the next 3 years. We do have a little bit of a SharePoint Online presence, but we are primarily and intentionally on-prem. So those of you who are SharePoint Online, enjoy your benefits. We are faced with all kinds of challenges by remaining on-prem. I will go over SharePoint Framework at a high level again. I'll explain how to install it and configure it. It is more of a developer, power user intended discussion. And I tried to scope this for all skill levels. So if you're not a developer, you're not a power user, it's okay. I'll provide the slide deck to Eric. We can make it available, and you guys can share it with your developers. So I'll go over that. They do have a demo. We'll create a simple app. I'll create an application extension in this case. I'll also show you how to create a web part, some screenshots. I won't actually fire the demo because installing the bits needed to run this takes about 15 minutes, and I want to use the time more wisely. So I have screenshots of what the stages look like. And then I'll explain some ways to deploy this to SharePoint 2019, both SharePoint Online and on-prem. And then hopefully have some time for Q&A afterwards. So really quick about me, I've been programming for a long time, most initially on mainframes for waste management many years ago. I've been on SharePoint for 12 years now. My first job was to migrate a company from WSS2 to SharePoint MOS, 2007. Currently, like I said, I'm migrating 12,000 plus sites to SharePoint 2019 on-prem. From our current on-prem infrastructure. And we have about 6 more months to do that. And on the side, you know, I'm one of those people who sits at home and codes in my spare time because that's how I find it relaxing. Call me sick, but I love doing it. I've got a couple mobile apps I'm playing with a .NET Web API background and doing Azure CI/CD on top of it. I love it. So really quick, overview of difference between classic and modern sites. Besides a noticeable difference, obviously, that we've seen, those of you who are on SharePoint Online or who have access to 2019 and seen the difference, very noticeable, more bloggish, more context card looking and feeling as opposed to just a classic list, the plain thing that we've seen since 2007. But some of the main things that my users come to me a lot of, and I've heard in the community, is, and I highlight them here, such things like user custom actions, where they're obviously supported in classic sites. In modern sites, they are still supported. They just don't support anything that's going to inject JavaScript or script code, CSS, less JavaScript, etc. For that, you're going to have to use SharePoint Framework. SharePoint Designer is supported for classic sites. It is not supported for modern sites. If you're like us at General Motors, we're going to have a hybrid environment. All our 2016 sites are coming over as classic, and then we're going to knock down the ability to create classic sites when we migrate, and you can only create modern sites from that point on. Because we love making things difficult, and I love stress, we're going to have a hybrid environment. So we've already had the discussions with our staff and our teams. You can use your SharePoint Designer on a classic site. It will not load for a modern site. They need to get used to it. Things like JS links, so your CSR, your client-side rendering, your custom render templates, custom CSS, custom master pages, gone in modern sites. You're supposed to be using SharePoint Framework for that. Office reporting tools, InfoPath, Access, SSRS, PowerPivot, PowerView, There's a lot of them. Power BI, anything that would run a Silverlight control or any of these embedded tools will not work in a modern site. We already have been moving all of that over to a report server to allow our business to keep moving while we try to figure out how we're going to juggle around the rest of the stuff on our SharePoint environment. There's a lot of other differences that happen in the background between classic and modern sites, and that's not what this discussion's about. But what do we do if we want to do branding? That was the reason why I put this deck together, is because I was tasked with, okay, we have this really highly cool custom branding thing that we did using custom actions, and then those guys left the company from GM, and they told me, oh, and you can't do that on modern sites. Okay, well, they use custom actions, so I've got to find an alternative. Well, one alternative is a custom theme. You can create a custom theme using the tool called Office UI Fabric Design Toolkit. There is a neat little online utility you can use that'll help you generate some hex code or some color palettes. It's pretty neat. It's slick. It runs in the browser, really lightweight. When you're ready to actually create your files, you download the toolkit to your machine using Visual Studio Code or WebStorm or whatever IDE you want. You can build your theme using React or AngularJS and actually build a customized theme that's deployable to your SharePoint instance. The cool thing about this is you SharePoint Online users can take advantage of that today. The bad news is us on-prem folks are limited to colors and fonts only. That doesn't help me. We want this logo up here, and I want this footer, and I want this header. All right, you're on-prem. If you only went to SharePoint Online, you could do that. We could opt out of it entirely. I could set it at the web application level or at the central admin, and I can say, no, we want the classic experience straight across the board. It's possible. The drawback to that is you're depriving your users of an improved experience. So we discussed this at one point. We said, well, why don't we just bring everything over as classic and leave it as classic and abandon the whole modern theme altogether? It not only deprives users of that experience, you're going to have to go to modern sometime. Microsoft's only going to cooperate and play with the legacy UI and look and feel and tool for so long. You know, their cadence is typically 10 years. Okay, you might be able to get away with it for another 5 or 6 years or so before they start forcing you to do something that's more modern. So why not just jump in and do it now? Besides, you're taking advantage of a lot more than just the look and feel. There's a lot more of a richer experience that your users can take advantage of. They really would like it. So the only alternative then is you've got to use SharePoint Framework. In this case, I'm going to talk a lot about the application extension because that's what you use to replace custom actions, but you can also do web parts. And I'll show you an example of both. So originally, as developers, we built and managed full trust code to highly customize SharePoint. We did this with C# oftentimes. We had to do it on the SharePoint server or install SharePoint on our machines or on our VMs and then build from there. The problem is this is not suitable for a multi-tenant online environment. You're Microsoft, and you want lots of people to use your tool. And you really think it's wise to have people put their fully built, full trust custom code in your environment that's shared with other tenants. I don't want it. I know Microsoft doesn't want it, so they had to put a stop to it. Well, developers started getting wise and using embedded JavaScript. The problem with JavaScript embedding is it exposes other security risks. So Microsoft had to come up with another solution. So they community-based SharePoint Framework. It was actually released in February of 2017. It's a nice, lightweight, reusable, community, like I said, community-focused. It's standardized. It allows you to create custom extensions on SharePoint and SharePoint Online, or on-prem, I should say, and online. But it does it in a future-supported, future-prepared, trusted way. It uses modern web stack technologies, such as like Angular, Knockout, React, TypeScript, Webpack for packaging, Gulp, Grunt. I mean, it's all the things that your front-end developers should already be well aware of. If you're a back-end developer like I am that's trying to cram yourself into a front-end world, I picked this up in 2 days of doing it. It's really easy, and it's really cool. It's also a streamlined experience both for your developers and your end users consuming it. Later on, I'll show you some screenshots. Again, building this is going to take time. I could be using talking and answering questions, so I'm not going to actually build this on my machine. But I built it over the past couple of days when I was putting the slide deck together. And when I took the screenshots, I'll be able to show you the streamlined experience your users will see, and what your developers can expect. And I think you'll be pleased. So real quick, the pros and cons. SharePoint Framework does not run in an iframe like a traditional SharePoint or provider-hosted app. So if you're familiar with provider-hosted apps, you'd build this thing, you'd push it to another application server, you'd add it to your app catalog, and your users would read that app catalog and put it on their site. And it would be an iframe. And I used to build these. And it was notorious for them saying, well, I don't want it to look like this. I want it to be a little bigger and sit over here. Well, you can't. It's an iframe. You get what you get. So styling was a big issue. Permissions was a big issue. Inheritance was a big issue. With SharePoint Framework, you don't get iframes. It injects it right into your SharePoint environment. It becomes the same code as your HTML with your SharePoint page in a modern environment. So you're basically doing the same thing that your power users and developers are doing today in SharePoint pre-2019 or on 2019 Classic, but you're doing it in a trusted, standardized way. You have better control because it's not an iframe. You have better control over arbitrary HTML and JS. We're currently scanning our environment. No joke. I'm scanning the content database looking for the word jQuery because I'm tired of supporting jQuery in my environment. And there are hundreds of thousands of references coming back. And those people are not going to be happy when I email them and tell them, you have to use our CDN version of jQuery. You can no longer use your own, otherwise you're going to fail the scan. Because the security scan exposed multiple vulnerable versions of jQuery that people were using like jQuery 1.2. And you have a lot more control if you have people do it this way. What's going to happen is it's going to build a package, kind of like an app package, but it's an SP package, and we'll go over that in a minute. And it's going to require it to be deployed to an app catalog. If you have governance over that app catalog, now your developers have to submit that to an app catalog through permission. That person grants that app access after doing their scans and their analysis and so on, and then it's made available to your SharePoint environment. There's a lot more system of checks and balances. Again, standardized framework. This is the way we need to be going. Also, you have tenant-wide deployment in SharePoint Online, not in on-prem. On-prem, we still have to do it one site collection at a time. So 12,000 site collections, I'm still trying to find a way around making that easier on myself. Lots of PowerShell. But again, Microsoft's saying, oh, if you wide, and I'll go over how to do that when we do the demo. A couple cons, there is a possible learning curve. Like I said, I'm more of a back-end guy. I can't go stick people. So I belong behind back-end code, but I have to be more of a front-end person. I have to be the full-stack developer that I tell my developers they need to be. I have to walk that talk now. And this allows me to do that. Again, 2 days I picked this up. And I consider myself an average developer. And so I would encourage your developers, or if you are a developer, I would encourage you to take a look at this if you haven't already. You'd be amazed at how simple it is to pick up. And I'll also provide links at the end that are basically step-by-step tutorial videos on how to do this. I didn't even watch the videos. I just watched the transcript, and I was able to pick it up. So I think you'd be really pleased. You are limited to client-side code, so no more building this server-side object model thing that when an event receiver fires on a list, it calls Active Directory and pulls property info down and then fires a command to the print server. You shouldn't be doing that on SharePoint, for one, and for two, no more. We're going to keep it nice and clean and simple and standardized and client-side, nice and safe. So one of the things that Eric, we're going to make this really confusing because we're both there. One of the things that Eric Skaggs is going to go over is some things like list view formatting. I don't know if he's going to cover column formatting, but this is just a picture of what column formatting looks like. Some of the things you can do with SharePoint Framework and modern sites right now to get this, and that's kind of shaded. The effort days is also a little darker. It should be a little darker, but the screen is coming up light on this one. I'm sure you've heard PMs and BAs ask for this before. I can't be the only one who said, I need this. Is that? Okay. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's heard this from PMs and BAs. I need this site to have color-coded status icons for all of my projects because I have to have that. And we'd have to go in and do something client-side pre-render template, CSS and JavaScript or jQuery, or set up a formula in a calculated column that changes the color or changes the icons and so on. Now you can do something like this. And, oh, that's not too bad. So I thought it was going to be really tiny. So now, with some JSON formatting, and Eric's going to go into this a little more later on, but with some JSON formatting, you can actually add this to your page, and you will end up with something that looks similar to this. So, and the title and feedback are blocked out because they're not relevant. But if you notice how the colors change based on the status. So if you look back in that JSON text, it's setting and this is just a snippet of it, but it's setting the color based on the severity. So, you can make this say whatever you want it to say. But the result is going to be your every other row, columnar, row-based formatting, however you want it. You have that freedom, and all it took was maybe 10, 15 lines of something you can edit in Notepad. It's a lot more developer-friendly, and you get the users to experience this, which they wouldn't get in a classic site without a lot of developer effort. So installing, the prerequisites, you do need an IDE, Visual Studio Code, WebStorm, whatever you like. I prefer Visual Studio Code. All my demos are in Visual Studio Code. Eric likes Visual Studio Code. We like Microsoft stuff. You do need Node.js on the machine. Notice I call out 8.15.1 here. The current long-term releases for Node are 8.x and 10.x. SharePoint Framework does not work with 10.x. I discovered this on accident the other day. 9? No, not with 9 either. Anything beyond 8. Although, don't quote me on that. I didn't try 9. I had 10 on my machine and it wouldn't compile. I read that it was only compatible with 8. And I downgraded to 8, the highest release, LTS release, 8.15.1, and everything worked beautiful. So, but 9, I'm not positive. But I do know, I called out here 8.15.1 so that if you run home and throw this on your machine and try it out and it breaks, make sure it's 8 first, or tell your developers. So it does require Yeoman and Gulp. Yeoman is the tool that's going to, it's like a task runner, it's going to go out and get the, like a wizard generator for the SharePoint code that we're going to be building here shortly. And Gulp is your task runner builder. Once that's done installing, you install Microsoft/generator-SharePoint. And I call out 1.7.1 here specifically because I've been running this for, 6 months now, working on my branding solution, and I didn't use the version. I just ran, generator-SharePoint and installed it, and everything was fine. Last week, I believe it was, I ran the same code on a new project, and everything busts. And it's telling me it's missing another package. And I have the package. I didn't put it in my notes, but it's missing a package. If you go out to NPM and install that package, everything works fine. So I think the 1.8 version needs a tweak. It needs somebody dropped it or commented it out or something. Again, it's a community thing. Anybody can check it out and do a pull request. I don't know what happened, but all I know is when I went back to 1.7.1, everything worked. So you have a couple options. Use 1.7.1 or download the latest, and when it breaks, they'll tell you what package is missing and go get that package. That's what I ended up doing the other day. Save yourself the hassle and do 1.7.1 for now until they patch it. Gulp Trust Dev Cert only needs to be done once per machine. What it does is Gulp is going to install a certificate on your local machine certificate store. But again, machine-based. So once you do this once, if it's a shared machine or if you have multiple logins, like a service account or a privileged account, you only need to do it once per device. So, and not once per project, once period. So once the certificate's in there, it's in there unless you remove it. And then finally, we type yo Microsoft SharePoint, and it will walk you through the wizard. This is the wizard that takes about 15 minutes. So we're going to go through these prompts really quick here so that Eric has a chance to do his presentation. So the first thing you're going to see is the guy that says, let's create a SharePoint solution. What's your name? You give it a name. And you get a choice of, at this time, SharePoint Online, 2016 and up, or 2019 and up. So 2016, again, this has been around since 2017, so you can build on 2016 servers if you still have them. But they'll be good for future. So in this case, I built one for 2019 and up. Where do you want to put the files? Current folder or a subfolder? Again, it's up to you. Architecturally, do you have one solution where you're going to pack a bunch of web parts and extensions? Then it might make sense to create a subfolder with a solution name. For me, I just used the current folder because it was a demo. Now, remember we were talking about tenant-wide deployment. This is what that means. You want to allow the tenant admin the choice of being able to deploy everything. Notice how no is the default. It's just a security trap to make sure that you're not going to accidentally allow this thing to be exposed to the entire tenant. So if you intend for this to be, yes, sir.
So I picked up on something you just said that I'm not aware of.
Yes.
Capital enemy default.
Yes. Really? We're all learning. That's the beauty of this thing, is we're all learning. Oh, I'm going to say things that I'm sure need to be corrected too, so correct me when I say something weird. But yes, it's if you hit no, it's not a deal breaker. You can go back and change it later. All that does is add an extra XML file to your solution that tells SharePoint this is available for tenant-wide deployment, which again, remember, does not work on SharePoint on-prem, only in SharePoint Online. So if you're doing on-prem, you can say this all you want, it's not going to work. I'm hoping they allow that, because that would be really cool. What are we building, a web part or an extension? Currently, those are your two options. I'm sure this will grow. This is 2 years old, and SharePoint 2019 is fairly new. SharePoint Online is growing in popularity. I'm sure this will expand, but for right now, those are your options. Web part just creates a web part, which is the thing that Eric was showing earlier with the, you can create the menu on the side, the properties menu, where you have full control over it. Very cool. I was playing with that a month or two ago. We're going to focus on extension because, again, I want to recreate the user custom action behavior. So what type of extension do you want to create? Application customizer, field customizer, list view, command set. Those are other things that Eric's been playing with that I'm not going to go into detail on today. I'm going to build an application customizer. That's the component that builds the custom action. So if you're looking to replace that functionality, that's what you want. Then it's going to say, what is your name and what is the description? You fill those in, and it's going to go and spend about 10 minutes spinning it up. When it's done, it's going to say, I'm all set. Run gulp serve to check it out. Okay. What gulp serve will do is it will fire a tool called Workbench. I'll show you what Workbench looks like in a little bit. It looks very similar to Eric's site that he was pulling up, only what it is, it's a locally run, completely contained on your machine interpretation of SharePoint. It's a single pager, but the layout is all SharePoint looking. You have the ability to add web parts. You have the ability to customize the screen. Really cool, and it all runs locally in your little machine. The problem is I'm building an application customizer. If you try to run gulp serve on a custom action, this is what it's going to do. Why? Look at the URL it's trying to go to. Oh, Microsoft. We don't all work for Contoso, but you can change this in the serve.json file in your project, and you can have it point to wherever you want. So if you really do deploy this somewhere on your local instance or in your SharePoint Online, or you want to run it locally and you have a VM and so on, you can change the URL in that file and it will, and then save it, it'll rebuild, and this will work. This is what gulp serve is supposed to do. So this is Workbench. You can see it's just a nice clean UI. It's got the whole Office 365 look and feel to it. You've got ability to act, to look at a tablet view, a mobile view, do a preview. But what's neat is when you hover over the top and you click the plus, it opens up what web parts are available. That's coming right from your solution. All of this is running off of a localhost instance on your machine. So I can go in and I can add my web part, which would look like this out of the box. That's all it does. Now, with that running, I can go back to my Visual Studio Code, make a change, Control-S to save, and this will immediately refresh, and my changes will be immediate. That's the cool part about the modern experience, the streamlined experience. This is what front-end developers are used to, working with these lightweight IDEs, client-side code, doing things like QUnit and Karma and Phantom.js for their unit testing for JavaScript. And they make a change, they Control-S, and all their unit tests fire right away, and it tells you what broke and where. That's what these guys are used to, and they're going to love something like this for building. So, building and testing, what happens is we need to build it and we need to package it. When you watch the tutorials or you're watching online or reading about this, it's going to say, okay, so in order to ship this, you got to run gulp package solution -- ship. You don't have to use the -ship. What that does is it grabs all the extra files and compresses them and puts them in the solution with it. I recommend it. It's not going to hurt anything. It doesn't add any kind of serious bloat to the package. But if you don't run bundle before you run ship, I'm going to show you what happens. Let me share my screen. So this is the, oh, let me drag it over there. So this is the solution that I built earlier, the demo I built earlier. And if you look over here, you can see what I mean where it says web parts and then new web part. If I also wanted to build an application customizer in this solution, I could start a new project in here following those same prompts I showed you earlier and tell it I wanted an application customizer. It would add it in library, LIB, but it would be the same level as web parts. It would be application extensions. And then under that would be that. So you can see how hierarchically you can construct your project to have multiple things. Multiple, you know, other web parts will be put in the web parts folder, other AppXs will be put in the AppX folder, etc. It'll do that automatically for you. And then here's that serve dot, oh, I deleted it. But this is where it's calling Workbench from. So when I launch the web part, this is what it's loading. In that application customizer, and here is where that Contoso reference is. But if I just come in here right now, and I type gulp package solution ship, watch what happens. So it's going to try. And then it's going to break. The web parts manifest list is empty. Ensure you have done a build. Oh yeah, that's right. I got to run gulp build first. So that's why I said you got to run before you run package solution ship, or you'll see something like this. Oops. You know, no manifests were found. Ensure a build is completed successfully. So if you're developers, or if you are a developer and you're going through this and you see that error when you run package solution, just remember, I just got to do a gulp bundle first. Not a build, I'm sorry. It's a gulp bundle. We'll talk about build in a minute. That's another command you need to run. So we've got the package bundled. We've got it packaged. Now what do we do with it? Well, now we need to deploy it. Okay, regardless of how you deploy it, it has to end up in an app catalog at some point first. So you have a couple options. We could deploy it manually. We could give it to an operations person, have them drag and drop it into a folder, into the app catalog, and be done with it. You can also auto-publish using Gulp. So in your SharePoint Framework application, you can install Gulp SPSync creds as a separate package. You add this code here to your gulpfile.js, which what it's doing is it's creating an additional task. Again, Gulp is a task runner, so you're creating an additional task. I highlighted that up there because that's an arbitrary name I gave it. You can call that whatever you want. Once that's added, now I build the solution because I need to include this task that I created. Now when I run Gulp and that name ship, it will go out to whatever URL I gave it here under site, and it will push it to that app catalog for me. The drawback to this is if you notice, username and password are in plain text in a JS file in my project. So I would advise use something like a HashiCorp Vault, Credential Store Manager, something to protect this, and then reference it here. I'll leave that up to you. But it does require the inline use of username and password right in your code. So keep that in mind. But it is an option. I've used it. It's pretty slick. I use it on my desktop only, so that, and I don't check that file in. Another option for you SharePoint Online users is you can use PowerShell. Just use your the SharePoint PnP libraries, which I love dearly. I'm going more to those meetings, talking more with that team. I love it. I grab the NuGet packages and use the bits. It's fantastic. But you can connect to your site, do add PnP app and point to the path on your machine, your local machine. Scope site means it's going to target just the site collection level, and then publish, and it'll do it all in one shot. It'll upload it to the app catalog and push it to your site for you. If you want tenant-wide deployment, SharePoint Online people, just leave the scope off. All you got to do is say publish. It'll find your app catalog, push it to the app catalog, and it's available tenant-wide. This monster is an example for us on-prem people of what we have to do if we want to publish. And this assumes that you've got the app in the app catalog already. So the first half of that is all just loading necessary libraries. So if you look, I've got two different references there. One is that awesome NuGet package I was talking about, that Office PnP, the SharePoint PnP, the Patterns and Practices team. That's where it says Office Dev PnP path. That came from that NuGet package. So all I did was just download the NuGet package, pulled the DLL out, and added it to my PowerShell as an import. The top two, you can get the SharePoint client and runtime from that Office Dev PnP package. I just grabbed it off the server so I could show you the difference between what I have on my server and what I needed to bring over. Those are the minimum files I needed. Then my PowerShell down below simply calls the app manager, finds the app catalog, and pushes it. That's all it does. I'm sorry for the crash course in brain surgery, but in summary, SharePoint framework, lightweight, standardized, easy to pick up, fun, great UI. The experienced developers will be able to quickly ramp up. There shouldn't be much of a learning curve. It's compatible with 2019 on-prem or SharePoint Online. It allows you to continue having scripted customizations in a more controlled, future-oriented way. It aligns with the strategy and direction that we're all going as an industry, more cloud-based. And I just showed you one method of doing this. There are a lot of different ways of doing this. And there's probably better ways of doing this, but this is what I've discovered myself over the past few months that I wanted to share. So, any questions, any feedback, any thoughts, any experiences? Yes? For SharePoint Online, yes. Or at least access to the app catalog.
Right, so if they have the app catalog locked down for
Right, what you would want to do is you'd want to generate that package, do your bundle, and then package solution. It'll create an SPPKG file, and then you just hand that off to, email it or hand it off to whoever your admin is, and then they can put it to the app catalog.
so, yeah.
If they feel like it. Yeah, and okay, so let me. I don't want to be the guy who just says, I'm sorry. Next question. I'll tell you a quick experience. In 2016 and 2013, my conversations with our architects was, we absolutely don't want an app catalog. I don't want to talk about it. Don't even discuss it. It's an architectural nightmare. I don't want people's code in our SharePoint, period. Okay. So SharePoint 2019 comes along. Eric, how are we going to do this branding thing? I said, you got to use an app catalog. Okay, I think app catalog will work. Yeah, I think we can figure something out. I think it's more of they didn't have the understanding. They want to keep it secure. They want to keep it simple. They want to keep us out of the business of doing extra work that we can have the end users do themselves, and then all we have to do is just kind of analyze, verify, secure, push. I think my architects needed that understanding. They needed to hear, oh, is that all it is? Okay, well then we'll lock it down to just us. They can send us their packages. We'll run them through a scanning utility in PowerShell, and then we'll just push them as we feel like it, or we'll reject them. And it took that dialogue, that conversation. I don't know if that's something that's possible for you too, but.
Yeah, very, very hard.
And we're going to Power Apps and Flow also. And again, Flow is not going to solve the workflow issue. Power Apps is not going to solve the SharePoint Designer issue. But that's exactly it. Yeah. Right. But you just said it exactly. Yeah. I hope over time, as this picks up and people realize they have to use it because they can't use workflows anymore, there's going to be more time invested in Flow and Power Apps. It's going to become more robust. It has to. It has to. Right. What else? Any other questions or feedback, thoughts, experiences on something I've talked about that you had? Yes.
If you can share why you had to stay on for so long.
Some of it has to do with licensing. We have an E3 license, but it's a gigantic company. General Motors is big and global, and our E3 license is highly customized. So we're trying to keep our licensing under control, and as well, there are still some people who insist that if we put it in Microsoft's cloud, everybody can see it. So things like sites that are, contain CAD drawings, blueprints, business proprietary information. They're definitely afraid that if we put it in Microsoft's cloud, Microsoft will have all our secrets and sell them to people. It's silly, but it's going to take a while to convert. Well, and I have a healthy fear as well, but it's going to take a while to convert everybody over to say, oh, look, it really is stable.
So we have a question from Naveed,
Yes.
and it is, the custom code and info pack be transformed into.
Not to my knowledge. I can research that and get back to you, but I'm not. That's XPath. Now, unless you're talking about like C# backend in InfoPath. Is that what you mean, Naveen?
Yeah, the C# code.
So, okay, so it's not something where you can just take the C# code and plug it in and let it transform it like Xamarin does to, C# to native app. It's more, you'll need someone with the development experience in both languages to be able to transform it. So I can research a little more and confirm, but so far, from what I'm understanding, C# being more back-end oriented of a framework, SharePoint framework is very much client-side, front-end web technologies. Does that make more sense? I hope it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought I'd lost you. I'll look into it more, and I can either bring it to the next user group, or I can post it to give it to you and post it.
You need a topic speaker for next week.
There you go. Can I convert C#?
And that was one of my questions, is everything that I create, it still has workflows, all the tools that I've applied in everything. And that was one of the things they said, as long as you don't have any work, it will transfer.
Exactly.
Pretty money, but it doesn't go through. I'll get a program, I'll buy a program,
Yeah, and Microsoft is committed to support InfoPath through 2026, which is contrary to their normal cadence of 10 years. It should deprecate and fall off in 2023. They've agreed to keep it on for 3 more years. And they will continue to support it from a performance and behavior standpoint. They're not going to patch it, they're not going to update it, and they're not going to enhance it in SharePoint at all. But it will, you're right, it will go over, it will work. However, like you said, custom code such as sandbox solutions, custom work like state machine workflows, none of that's going to go over. Good question. Yep, okay. Oh. I'm sorry, is there what? Not to my knowledge. It's not, it's just not, I mean, you can continue to use InfoPath the way you have today. You can open InfoPath forms, you can do it in the browser and so on, but the integration of InfoPath into SharePoint is important. You should be right. You should be using Power Apps. You should be using JavaScript and SharePoint framework for your custom portal. Yeah, for modern sites.
For modern.
Yeah. Classic sites you can still, if you're doing the hybrid approach, you can still do still do what you've been doing in 2016 or 2013. Yes, because you're not going to get classic sites in Office 365. That's right. Yep. Yep.
And check, can you guys on the call hear me?
Yes,